Ages ago, I struggled with drugs and alcohol. I was in a very dark place where life and death didn't mean very much to me. And there were three groups: Pink Floyd, REM, and Neil Young. And those three were the bands that I credit with keeping me alive. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait and raped and pillaged, figuratively and literally, that country, we sent troops to kick Saddam out of Kuwait. Unfortunately, Neil Young came out against that. And I had to stop being a fan. I couldn't listen anymore. I'm a soldier. I'll fight a war. I don't want to. I don't think war is the answer at all. But sometimes it is the only answer. And in terms of Saddam's invasion of Kuwait, that was the only answer. We had to kick him out. But anyhow, now Neil Young wants Spotify to take Joe Rogan off. And we know how that turned out. Spotify pulled his music. He said, me or Rogan. Like I said earlier, don't listen to my advice blindly. Don't listen to Rogan or Rogan's guests blindly. If they bring something up, look it up. To do what this bit that I'm doing right now, I had to research things. I had to learn about GMOs. I had to learn about insulin. I had to learn about GMOs in COVID vaccines, okay? I had to do research. Didn't take me very long, okay? I'm not an expert, but I read what experts said. So this is the same Neil Young who in 2015 released an album called The Monsanto Years. Okay, Monsanto made Roundup. Okay, Roundup has been found to cause some cancer. There's open debate on it, but they have been fined and they are paying out. But his rhetoric, his anti-GMO rhetoric, helped fuel the narrative that made it easy to spread fear and distrust about the vaccines because the vaccines use GMO processes, okay? That's what they do. A collective amnesia has set amongst progressives regarding the left's past pandemic regarding the left's past pandering to the anti-biotech movement. Reactionary leftism, especially around biotech, was politically correct and convenient for progressives. Now it's not. Now they want to support the vaccines blindly. Okay, fine. It's hypocritical. That's what it is. Monsanto, see, they did Roundup, but they also produce GMO, cotton, soy, other things, right? Neil Young embraces GMOs to prolong his life, but tries to block benefits for others. So what was this about? This was written back in 2015. So what was this about? Well, so Monsanto, what is he saying here? Monsanto, let our farmers grow what they want. Right, okay. Monsanto wasn't controlling that. Genetically engineered crops have been engineered to grow better, okay? There's a lot of things that can be done, but one of the primary things that it does is it increases crop yields. We have starving people in our country and around the world. GMO helps that, and it increases their profits. So they're not doing this against their will. He's saying that Monsanto was forcing farmers to grow GMO crops. Misinformation. Disinformation. Misinformation, mistake. Disinformation is on purpose. Every scientific oversight organization agrees that GMOs are safe and environmentally friendly. Denying the evidence is no better than paranoia. Yeah. And remember, GMO keeps you and millions of other diabetics alive every day. What do they mean by that, Well, first let's look at some of the things that GMO foods do here. More nutritious, tastier, disease, drought resistant, less use of pesticides, increased supply of food with longer shelf lives, reduced costs, faster growing plants and animals. Okay? Yeah, that's what it does. We figure out what causes something, then we remove that, and then we grow it with altered DNA. Yeah. See? You figure out what apple tree grows really strong and vibrant, and then you graft your tasty fruit branch onto there, and then all the fruit is the tasty fruit, but the trunk is good and strong and resistant. That's a form of GMO. What farmers have been doing, grafting, for years. So anyhow, back to that comment about diabetics. So Neil Young suffers from type 1 diabetes. By 1951, as you could see, his health had deteriorated. He was put on insulin. Insulin, genetically modified. We take the human insulin gene, we put it into a bacteria. As the bacteria grows, it grows more and more of that human insulin that's then harvested. See, because we used to get it out of the pancreas of cows and pigs that had been slaughtered, okay? That was a much more difficult process, and you need dead animals for that, right? So we learned how to make it by growing it in a bacteria. 40 years ago, it was very controversial, but it got FDA approval. That's how we make insulin nowadays. GMO in it, in bacteria. And so he's against GMOs that save his life. So he's hypocritical and spreading disinformation. That is really wild, you know. You can make your own insulin, believe it or not, but not going to get into that. But we need more of it, not less of it. But people, such in Europe and stuff, have bought into the hysteria over GMO, and they ban it, and they ban the research. So there are diabetics out there who can't get insulin and end up dying because of people like Neil Young. And now he wants Joe Rogan pulled off of Spotify for spreading disinformation about COVID, saying things like maybe we're suffering from mass hysteria. Maybe young people don't really need the vaccine. Maybe they don't need to take the risk. And I'm for that. I mean, my daughter's young, and she wanted to get the vaccine so we could go to concerts, but told her there was a risk. You know, we don't really know. And she went ahead and did it. But it was her decision. And I back it. I have it too. God, I hope there aren't any long-term effects. I don't really think there are because, personally, I just don't see how it's going to affect us long-term. The fact that it wears off and stuff like that, you know. But we get to the COVIDs. Vaccines now. They're made with genetic engineering. The very same thing that Neil Young spoke out against is the same thing he is now protecting by threatening to pull his music. Does that make any sense to any of you? He's a hypocrite who did no research. Report, strong spike in Google searches for who is Neil Young. Man, it really saddens me that this is where he is now. Here he is, Stephen Colbert making fun of him with some GMO corn. And of course, Neil Young quotes overzealous anti-GMO regulations in the European Union as if that was scientific proof. You see, it's disinformation that he boycotted Spotify over disinformation while promoting his own disinformation. How does that make any sense? How should we take him seriously when there's such a glaring hypocrisy to him? Joni Mitchell, who oddly enough looks like Neil Young now, she stands in solidarity. Oh, that's good. So now, Pave Paradise, put up a parking lot, is now for censorship. What the fuck is going on here? Rogan supposedly got in trouble for talking about mass hysteria, right? But and there's people out there who try to say that mass hysteria doesn't exist, and we're seeing it. We're seeing people trip over themselves to now force Spotify to censor Joe Rogan over him bringing up valid points. Look, if you're a young person, you hear Joe Rogan say, don't take the vaccine, maybe you should look at it a little bit more in depth. I'm not trying to excuse Rogan. I've known Joe Rogan as a fan way back into the news radio days. I also want to show Hardball, UFC announcer, but, I don't listen to his podcast. I don't. I don't follow what Rogan says. I don't follow what Trump says. I follow what logic and common sense says. Yoko Ono has threatened to have her music added into Spotify unless Joe Rogan is removed. There's a lot of these, but I chose this one as the best because I love Yoko Ono as a person, John Lennon's wife. I respect her, but her music is horrible.